So we see that, all those things that before I move ahead, I want to talk a little bit about the previous point about Pershing's brutal response. The Mexico's response is that, U.S. behavior is too heavy-handed and created some kind of resentment because the Pershing crossed the border and burned down some villages. So you see that there is some kind of tainted relationship. But of course, U.S. Mexican relationship remained close throughout 20th and 21st century, mainly through migration and little bit of economic ties, and this created tremendous closeness between the US and Mexico and also mixing of culture. The high point of such cooperation is when the Vicente Fox and the George Bush were come close to signing some important cooperation. Unfortunately, due to 9/11 happened, US became more focused on the border issues rather than working on overhauling immigration reforms, allowing for more fluid movements of people between the two countries, especially with regard to low-skilled laborers in agriculture sectors where there is a high demand for such workers. Instead of that, US withdrew itself upon concentrating more um, on border issue uh, due to the security implications of migration. So we see that um, uh, for the Mexico-US relationship as now one of being uh, more of a standstill. So moving on, we will see the what's how what are the some of the big key political movements in Mexico since colonization, specific to 20th century. The big point to C is the dominance of one party, PRI, which is Partido Revolucionario Institucional, which has been in control since the mm, 1930s up till 2000. They had the control of presidency since the 1930 to 2000. That's like 70 years of stronghold. How did they do it? They followed what you call corporatismo. It has nothing to do with the corporate. The word corpo derives from the Latin, which means like one body and different parts of the body. So basically, what they did is they they thought they believed PRI believed that we can equally appeal to different political groups within the society. So um, we are a party of revolution, but we want to help everybody in society. So they managed to get the support of all the groups um, within the society. How did they do it? In some case, it was through bribery. Like if your district votes for us, we will build school, we will build road, or if your area votes for us, we'll have a good sanitation. So the those are some of the bribery method they use to get vote. In some other instances, if a particular leader stood up asking for the rights and asking question, they just simply co-opted them. They brought him into their own political party, and that's the co-optation tactic. And in some other case, it's at some cases they use the extreme option of coercion, where whoever stood up against their party, their businesses were burned down, which is not a legal mm, method in a democracy. So you see that PRI did some dirty work in the otherwise democratic society. So um, you see that they followed these three tactics to maintain their dominance over presidency. They did PRI's role as changed in the 1980s and 1990s uh, through economic reforms which they brought in. We will talk more in detail when we come to the political economy of Mexico in the later part of the course. But it's enough to say that economic reforms which they brought in made matter worse for PRI to get more money from its supporters because it hurts the funding of PRI and its clientelism. And the local business, which were now open to open market and competition from outsiders, did not do well. And then the next thing we see is that they suffered funding from their support groups. This has opened up the doors for another party plan, uh, which break the stranglehold and came to power in 2000. And then you have um, um, you have two leader Vincente once, and then you have Calderon. So for 12 years, you have new party PAN, which was more friendly towards business and more friendly to traditional Catholic religious practices come into power than the more secular PRI. This opens up to the idea that Mexico is becoming more um, democratic as multiple party can compete and win election in Mexico, and the Mexico is like democracy is in demand, and that's the point which I want the class to take. As we see, um, sorry, there was okay. This is the point I was talking. So um, you see that the democracy is taking shape in Mexico as we see with the emergence of multiple party coming to power. So with this in mind, we will talk next about um, case of Nigeria and how that colonial experiences shape the society. We see that in the case of even though both US and Mexico have gone through colonial experiences, uh, we see the Spanish imprints of colonial legacy is much more on Mexico, and it had more negative effect on Mexico than the colonial experience on the US. So that is the one important key takeaway for this week, and we have seen that how Mexico Spanish colonial legacy has led to the way the Mexican politics has been happening even to this day. So with that, we will next deal with the case of Nigeria.